So, all right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Happy New Year. This is, well, I did a show with Danny yesterday for our podcast, but this is my first sort of regular show of the year. Happy 2021. Sonia Barrett is with me, and she is actually with me. And this is Human Game number 12. And sometimes Sonia contacts me and is like, let's do a show. And other times I see that she's put out an article and I think she's talking about one thing that I'm super interested in. And then I read the article, I'm like, nope, that wasn't it, but I'm interested in that too. So it's so funny how like the two people can have completely different takes or perceptions on the same coded words, right? And so we're gonna do, I think what we're gonna do is the first hour on sort of her new article, which is Cosmic GPS and Coordinates. Right? I think that was the title. Do you even remember what the title is? She doesn't even remember that she wrote the article. I'm like, what? Right? But you did write the article. I did write the article. Yeah, I think that's what it was titled, Cosmic GPS.
Yeah, it was Cosmic GPS, and there was a subtitle. I just, right off the bat, I don't remember what the subtitle is.
Yeah, something.
But I feel like I want to look. But
all right, let's look. Let's look real fast.
Let's look.
Hold on, I know where to find it because I found it this morning to go back and read it again. So I can quickly find it. Let's just see. Let's see somewhere. There's the cross. So it was crossing the bridge between 2020 and 2021.
That was it.
The cosmic GPS and the current coordinates, right?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That was it. Right.
So with Michael Wan and I have been playing with a lot of the same concepts, and from a totally different perspective.
Right.
So I thought we would do the first hour on sort of your article and like why you were bringing this idea of cosmic GPS and the current coordinates forward, like what that, like where you're kind of going with that. And then in the second hour, I'm going to get your take and maybe play some game with you on where we're going with cosmic GPS and current coordinates. And so she doesn't seem very excited about that. Sonia,
Emily, you just never know. She's gonna spring on you. So
well, happy 2021.
Thank you. Happy new cycle to you too. Yeah. Happy 2021, whatever that
is. Do you think that's really the year that it is?
No, I don't know that we will ever truly have a handle on the year that it is, because we don't even know what we're measuring. What does that mean? And it is a very trippy thing when you think about it, because everything is so math based. It's numerical. It's time. It's still mathematics. It's numbers. We're dealing with a moving system. We're dealing with virtual illusions. We're dealing with what's traveling is our consciousness. There's so many factors that we're dealing with that it's really kind of tough, which is why scientists or archaeologists and so on, they'll go, oh, we discovered footprints where there should be footprints, or we discovered this where we've done before and we haven't. Well, what's happening? Is it the same virtual spot? Is it so there's all of those factors that is not common. That concept is not common to most people because we're conditioned to see reality as a very static experience. And by all accounts, our interaction with reality does make it seem like it's just one sort of dimensional experience that we're having, because it's just moving so rapidly that you can't really tell. And then we get caught up in our game and our stories and life.
Well, I think that I think people think I don't know what people think of reality and of time or whatever, but let's take it sort of into the lexicon that you've created about this, and they see the game as fixed to a certain extent, right? And that the board is like the generator of the game, right? And that time is like one of the things that the board uses to generate the game, right? Okay. Instead of just thinking that like the board is just simply like scaffolding or some sort of like basic structure around which the individual can move, and the individual is actually the one generating time and therefore generating the game. We're just all using one basic set of equipment, and that is the thing that we like collectively agree is Earth or
Right.
whatnot, right? And so immediately, if you change the perspective of that the board is generating the game to that the player is actually generating it, or generating like time, which is what the game is generally in a lot of cases based on, but doesn't necessarily have to be, right? Then that suddenly provides alternate explanations for what you're talking about. Like,
Right.
you know, like that if something is there one day and not the next day,
Right.
and
Well,
whatever.
you're the
right?
generator. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we are the generator, and it is perception based. It is everything is altered by every new idea that we have, every new realization that we have.
Mhm.
And the more fixed our understanding is, the more limited our understanding is, then the game is going to reflect
Mhm.
that appearance. And most of that is based on safety. Most of that static kind of experience for people is based on a more safer version of reality, something that looks like it's consistent, familiar, not so much unknown. Those things are comfortable for people, because everything else that we're talking about can be so scary to a lot, to other people. And even the people who consider themselves to be pretty aware, it's amazing the limitations. This whole game is incredible, because it's amazing the silent limitations that are there.
The silent.
Yeah, it's there, and we are all hooked up to this massive network. Based on what you were talking about. But yes, this concept, maybe like you said, like Earth, that we are all agreeing on, but we can only be in agreement like that and interacting if we are connected to a common network. Now, it doesn't mean that that's the only network in town, but we're just talking about the network as it relates to what we define as the human experience at this time.
Mhm.
And everything that we're generating in ourselves and with each other, connecting with each other to reflect this, to some degree, a common version of reality. We have a common version of reality, but then at the same time, each of us in our own mind space and understanding do still have like a unique version of reality. And some of us keep changing that, and some of us are hanging on to making sure that it doesn't change.
Mhm.
And so you get us that are we keep pushing the envelope, and the more people like us are pushing the envelope, is the more we start to move into different levels, different versions
Mhm.
of the similar, concept, the
Mhm.
similar concept of, let's say, Earth. But it doesn't mean that we are still.
There's no similar concept of Earth.
Yeah,
Flat Earth, around Earth, the concave.
Even started on all that.
Right.
Oh my God.
I haven't heard. I have not ever. Maybe we'll generate it by this because you and I come up with all the ideas.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh yeah.
But I have not yet seen people go wild over the idea that we're not even on Earth.
Oh no.
Right. So we have lots of arguments about the shape of Earth and all that kind of, it's the center of the universe, or if we live in a heliocentric or a geocentric kind of thing. But we haven't had like a big meme of people questioning whether or not we're actually on Earth. So
well, yeah, but it's the same thing as are we anywhere? Are we anywhere?
Are we everywhere? Yeah.
Am I talking to myself? I mean, so you could just keep going with this. Is
Right.
anybody there? What's anybody? You could just get really crazy with it, because sometimes I do, and I'm, you sit and you go, maybe it's just me. Me is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Me is all of this. So I think that I've always tried to encourage people to get really outrageous
Mm-hmm.
with the concepts. You have to get outrageous. It's the only way you break through the ceiling of this common and what appears to be limited version of reality that most are affixed to. Now, that's only if you want to, expand more. If you want to expand more, then that's what you have to do. It's okay. It doesn't have to be, well, that's ridiculous. And you get people that are like that. Well, that doesn't make any sense. That's just ridiculous. Everything, honestly, everything makes sense. Everything is just part of the possibilities, and it just depends on what we're engaged in. It just depends on what's the latitude of our perception.
Like if something can occur to a person, it can make sense.
That's basically, they have to have the experience, which is why it doesn't matter how many teachers you have, or it doesn't matter what you're learning from somebody else. Ultimately, in the end, it's your unique experience that validates, that verifies, that cements. It's that knowing that has to begin to happen to move forward. Now, real quick, in saying that, this is why for such a long time, the New Age movement have always been about everybody. It's almost like everybody needs to be on the same page for us to ascend. It's like everybody needs to be in this same agreement for anything to work. And I'm always like, I've been forever going, no, no, there's safety, yes, in numbers. There's safety in numbers. And that's part of what happens, why you get people who attach to some of these New Age movements, the limitations, because then they don't have to really do as much work. I'm not going to offend somebody out there, but that's not uncommon.
So go for it. All the way.
No, but those things become a way to distract ourselves from actually doing any kind of work. Now, let me really rephrase or define that. When we say do the work, we hear it all the time, do the work. Well, even the idea of doing the work gets also woo-woo as well, because what is that? I'm going to say doing the work is really just letting go and giving yourself absolute permission to see all of what reality could potentially be and allow it without having to go into these safe zones of saying what it can't be. The only time when you say what it can't be, then that's the stop for you right there. That's where it stops and you can't see anything else. Reality is like silly putty or whatever you want to call it. It'll be any darn thing that we want it to be, whether we are in human form or not, because it is anything that we want it to be. But when we are engaging, it is being experienced as we are able to accept that experiencing. And that's basically, all that is happening. But it is not a fixed experience by any means. It is any and everything. And it is bending to our will. It is showing us, oh, well, this is where you are. Okay, well, then this is what I am. It is anything. It's so hard for people to get that. So, okay, so then you get the people who consider themselves to be major experts. And then they also do the same thing. Then they go to these conferences and lock people into a box of belief system. It's like they lock them in and that's the way it is. And there's nothing else around that. It's not possible. And what I've learned is over the years on my own is that it just, everything is possible. Every darn thing is possible. And I just freed myself in that knowing. Now, doesn't mean that I'm not dealing with all the earth programs. Now that's the work right there, is the recognition of everything I just said, of realizing it's just an ocean of possibilities. Now, why can I only see some possibilities? Well, because I'm coming up against my human programs. I'm coming up against all of the data that's been there to allow me to have these certain kinds of limiting experiences in this game, because that's the game, right? The game is be very limited, then find your way out of it. Then discover
thing, and you over and over and over until at a certain point. At what point are we going to stop accepting the 1 inch out on the game board and whatever, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about, so I'm envisioning a lot of what you're talking about right now, and my mind just generates all these pictures, and I'm trying to decide which one to use here. I think there's two that I kind of have. So particularly with a lot of people, both in the New Age movement and in the alternative information truth movement kind of thing, you have this scenario, and I don't know if this is like a phenomenon of ego or a phenomenon of like that they just are limited, the people doing this are limited in their thinking, or if it's just a financial thing or whatever, right? It's like you have a person who like becomes a teacher and leads somebody out of their little small box, right? But the pen that they have set up is just really only slightly bigger, right, than the one before. And because they have because we all acknowledge that the littler box is false, and that this person helped you to discover some slightly bigger truth, then we spend a lot of time in that space thinking that, okay, all the things that are within this, we're not even realizing necessarily we're in a bigger box, right? Because one is called false and one is called truth or fake or truth or whatever, right? So then there's all this mingling that goes around in there, and we meet other people that have discovered the same thing and that are like-minded and that are interesting and whatever. But then what happens when one person that is within there says, well, hey, what about this? And it doesn't go along with everything else, right? Like suddenly that bigger box actually tightens down and wraps around the other box that we already decided was false, right? And then you suddenly have to decide, like, if you're going to decide that that's a hug, or if you're going to figure a way to squeeze your way out of there. And if you do that, you're going to be by yourself again, which is how you felt when you were immersed with the fake people, the fake thing, right? So we have a lot of that going on, and I have a few people that I really think of when I, who like have revealed great truths to us and then trapped us with a very limiting viewpoint on what humanity is, or that you haven't actually learned enough, or you haven't come around to all the things that I have told you, and that kind of shit. So there's that. And then the other thing that I'm seeing is like the earth, like whatever the fuck it is, right? You and I both we don't know.
It's some virtual system. It's just some virtual simulation. Doesn't matter. We call it any name.
Right. Yeah. But it's like the stuff that that is here for us to work with
in this specific version. That's all it is, in this specific game system.
Yes. Okay. And so like there's like all these two things here that are what you can work with, right? And we sometimes get stuck going like, I like these things, right? These are the things I'm attracted to and that appeal to me, or that I think are good. And also it is in my understanding of these things that is how I like explain the rest of everything, right? So somebody who is completely like into technology, everything is like a download or an upgrade or whatever
language,
right? That kind of thing, right? And so like and we see, and then you can see all the other things that are around tools as like features, and they're interesting, but they're not really descriptive of what the experience is. And to challenge oneself to like not use their general language or their general sort of pieces of reality to describe the situation that we're in at this moment is the thing that then opens the space up farther. So like one of these games that I used to play, like when I was going to parties a lot, right? And I've always been highly observant and sensitive to what was going on around, but when you're on drugs, good kinds or bad kinds or whatever, right? Like your observation is often heightened, and you become aware of things that you're not necessarily. And certain things in the environment, like we all have things that are annoying. A drunk person who's bumping into you is always annoying at a party. But when you're on drugs, there's other things that you observe that like are fucking really bothering you, and nobody else would even notice that was going on, right? And so like I would notice that when I became aware of one of those things, it would take me out of my own rhythm, my own sync, my own ability to dance. And to the extent that I tried to forget about it or resist it, like it would agitate me and I couldn't play my game. And then I figured out at a certain point, if I just swallowed it and digested it and made it part of the game, right? So if I like took it in and was like, all right, this is now like, this is another player, or this is a new thing, and actually like took whatever that was in and made it like part of the game board or part of the makeup of whatever was going on, or turned it into a prop or did whatever. But like if my reality can expand far enough to include whatever that reality is, then the whole thing has widened, even though I don't like that. Like for us to really, for anybody to really have full access to all the tools of the game kind of thing, you have to have room for every what everybody else is doing
Right.
with it. Right. And to simply say the wall stops here and I don't like what's right over here, that actually limits anywhere that you can go with the game.
Right. And of course, the people that
does that make sense what I just said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's scary to me. But anyway.
What's scary?
Then what you said made sense. No. Because it was a lot of it.
Yeah.
But no, I completely hear what you're saying. And you know, you made me lose my trend. Thank you.
Sorry.
No. What was I going to tell? I was going to tell you something about people, and I completely lost.
So I had talked about like that. I just sort of incorporated whatever the thing I didn't like was into my game,
right?
As like just another like little thing on the obstacle course, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think because we are so programmed for polarization, it's good, it's bad, it's black, it's white, you know, it's positive, it's negative, that it does put us in this fragmented state all the time. Not realizing, and I think you were at that free teleconference, and that was part of what I was trying to get people to understand, is the more we can really realize that like everything really is still us, you know, and I know people say that, but when we can really like get that, like the deeper we can go with understanding that and owning that, is the easier all of this will be. But because there's so much fragmentation of what we don't like, now you just sort of brought everything in, is what you're saying, to your game. Well, it was already in your game, which is the only reason why you could observe it. So everything is in our game that shows up, maybe not in our immediate game like we think, our blueprint up there, but somehow we end up in the space of everything that we end up in. Somehow we encounter it. We just do. And, you know, it's up to us, the reaction that we have at that point, because every reaction, it creates some sort of relationship with whatever it is, you know, energetically, it's some way. But what you did in that situation was you decided to incorporate, which then completely changes the outcome, or changes, excuse me, the relationship you could have had with liking or not liking the thing. Now, what we have to remember is, our not liking the thing, just as much as liking it, but particularly not liking the thing, the portal that opens up and it takes us, everything that we're so in opposition to, it always ends up opening up as some sort of portal, and we go down all these various holes because of the emotional relationship that we now have with this idea, this thing, this person. And the more we can really just sort of bring it in and remember that, wait a second, like everything is still me, and everything really is happening for whatever reason, you know, but it is. The more that we can cut that off to some degree, or stop that, not false stop, but stop it based on an understanding and a realization. It's that aha moment. Okay. Then you won't go down that portal that it will take you down into experiences 2 weeks from now that you will not associate with that moment. You know, so it's that's why that becomes so necessary. The more that we can limit the fragmenting process of like and dislike and positive and negative, and, you know, right and who's wrong, all of those things are constantly keeping us distracted. It busies us on a daily basis. It's really what keeps our day going. 24 hours a day, we sleep, we get up, we start over with the same stories again. But the more that we can understand that, see that, is the more that starts to change. And our lives actually start to take on, for lack of a better word, a more balanced, or maybe more peaceful space. But the more of those things that we've got going on is the more of that.
Yeah.
Because they have to, they're there because you call them up. I don't like this person. I don't like this thing. Well, that's a cue right there. That's, oh, okay.
Mhm.
So what does that mean when you don't like something? That's what energetically is being said. Now you have to get all into all the experiences that come with that. So again, like you said in the earlier part, we are the generators, and that is one of the perfect examples as to how we're generating the reality space that we're in, the conditions that we're part of, because we are actually giving giving orders. These are orders that we have initiated. Well, I don't know why. I would never do that. I don't know why that person would do that. So now you need to know why. So it's like just listening to yourself as to all this stuff you say. I don't know why I'd never do that. And then then you go back to the ego thing. So there's all these, like a big obstacle course, this human experience, again, that I keep saying is criminal because it's like a setup.
Mhm.
It's like a setup. You go back to that movie about the cube, which I always love that movie, just because of that one part. More than anything else, is everybody trying to figure this out, this puzzle out, how they got here, and coming up with all these different things. And the one person that
What's the movie, The Cube?
I think it's the cube. The one person that is supposedly maybe autistic or something going on with him. It was a matter of standing still. It is standing still, and ultimately, he was able to make his way out. But then everybody else, which is human life, get caught up in all of these stories and all of these other things. And then the standing still aspect, the idea, then the symbology of standing still, is going back to just what I said earlier. Can we catch ourselves when we get into these distracting moments of emotions and beliefs? If we can catch ourselves there, then that is when we are standing still. When we stand still in those particular moments as it relates to a particular situation, you allow yourself to not take that journey down that road. It's probably no longer necessary for you. You get it. So now you've centered yourself. And the more we keep doing that, it's an exercise program, because we're coming up against all our programs, all the programs that have existed since the human program, which I mentioned in the article, since the idea of human beings existed, since the human program, because that's what it is. This concept is like a generated program that we're participating in. Since that beginning, and everything that was experienced from that point on, well, it's all in our genetics, it's all in our DNA, all this information, data is all there. So think of all the limitations, all the wars, just everything. We're dealing with that experience now. We're dealing with that. And so when we recognize that, we can realize, okay, we're just coming up against all these programs. That's the great work. That's the great work. Confucius said, enlightenment need not take a lifetime, but can come in a moment. Now, the difficulty why it doesn't seem to come in a moment is because of all the things I just said. We're constantly in fragmentation, in polarization. So the constant battle of that. And it's not about this fake, oh yeah, I've worked on all of that. It's not about this fake, positivity and bliss, which a lot of that happens because this part of us is good at tricking you into thinking you've got these things covered. It's a very, very tricky situation. But it does require that kind of surrender, just to knowing that it's okay. That was my point in that free workshop. Is like, it's okay. Everything that I have been, everything that I am now, everything that I'm going to become or move into, it's all okay. It doesn't matter that we say that wasn't real, because we get caught up in that. Well, that wasn't, real. That wasn't true. That was fake. That everything is real when it's real
when
for
it's
you.
Happening. Yeah.
It's what it is. Can you just accept that and not chastise and beat yourself up for who you were and where you were in your understanding 2 years ago or yesterday or last week? Can we do that? That's how we start to penetrate the game. That's how we start to move beyond this specific version of the game. That's how we have to do it. It's not the fight. It's just not about the fighting. It's not about the battles. It's not about the you're right, I'm wrong. And that just keeps you more in the game because the game needs that. Mm-hmm. This particular game, version of the game, it's looking for all of those things to provide you with the experiences that you need, that you ordered up to be able to, go through them and then make your way, eventually go, oh, okay, oh my God, that was so silly. That was so funny. If you can get to funny.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole, like, the genesis sort of like the little story I told you about at parties was I spent a lot of time when I first started going to parties, like the DJ would be playing music, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm perceiving it a certain way. And I would look over it at like some of the things other people are doing. I could not understand how they were getting that out of what I was hearing. Like, this is what I was getting. They were getting that. How is that even possible? Right. But learning to, like, what you're talking about, like, sometimes I was bothered by it, right? Sometimes it really bugged me, especially if it felt like it was intruding into my understanding of what I thought I was experiencing. But exactly what you said, when I got to the point where it was like, actually, not only is it hilarious, but now I find it fascinating, right? I'm now fascinated by the, like, reality that this person has created from the same stimulus that I created, whatever mine is. And this fast forwards into like the current state of like reality. And when what I do, like, I've gotten to the place where I really enjoy talking to people who I disagree with, because even if I think they're wrong, which I don't even know if we understand anymore what the fuck right and wrong, right. But if the reality that they perceive around an issue that maybe we're disagreeing on, if that reality is at least coherent to me and can make sense, I'm very amused and interested and entertained, because there's some part of their game that, like, if there's a chord or a thread, I'm like, oh, I see how you're doing it. I think what you're doing with it might be not what I would do, but that's kind of fascinating. Yeah. And then you have gained a new tool for your game. So even like stuff that we think is stupid might have a smart thing inside of it, right. And it's here for a reason. And if the game is what we say it is, and it's being generated by us, like, maybe our subconscious even put it there so you would look outside of your own toolbox into something else, right? And be like, oh, I can make something with that, right? Yeah. So right now I want to ask you like a question that doesn't usually occur to me to ask you, but I want to ask you this now because I think it's important. Well, it's not necessarily personal.
I'm just joking. Okay, go ahead.
Right. I think that we're in this phase right now where, like, the world is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It probably always has been, but for us, because this is the time when we're alive, it feels like, wow, has it ever been more cuckoo than this? Yeah. But I'm sure every generation says that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for lots of people, in order to move forward in a way that their life feels expansive and not contracting, it not like it's contracting, and that feels like something that they can make peace, like something to move people into a space of opportunity, as opposed to things are being taken away from me. People are going to have to let go of something that they used to believe was true or important, or that they got fooled by or whatever. And like, when I say let it go, I mean like really let it go, like really move beyond, right? And you've been doing this in the way that we're doing it for longer than most of us, because you were onto something about it sooner than most people were. I'm not saying that this is because you're some old lady and you've been playing the game so long. You're not. You're younger than me. You're 12. I saw the picture.
I like Emily.
Right? But you got somewhere before most of the rest of us. But you still experienced all the things that people are experiencing right now. Oh, yeah. So what is something that you were very convinced at certain points on your truth journey, something that you were convinced that this is true, that this is reality, that this is how it is, that I'm certain of this, that like you were fucking wrong and you had to accept it and let it go? Can you give us an example that we can look to and go, okay? Because like a lot of people right now had a belief that like somebody was going to do something to help their perception of reality, whether it was a politician or fake conglomeration of people on the internet who give out information or whatever. They're going to have to let something go in order to be able to like start playing their game and stop being in somebody else's game. Can you tell, like, what was something that was a big lesson in that for you? Something that you were so certain was true and gonna happen, and it just didn't, and you had to make peace with it and move forward?
God, I don't know. The only one thing I would say that really comes to mind is as I was discovering all of this, and and then it was just becoming so incredibly profound. I went through a stage. I don't know if I hung on to it, but I went through a stage where I really felt like I was gonna have to like save everyone. But I think a lot of times people go through that save people phase. And so I remember that experience, because what happened is it's like, wow, it's like, I'm gonna have to tell everybody, and of course, that's how I felt. It's like, wow, because it was so mind blowing to me, some of the things at the time. It's like, wow, so I felt like I had this responsibility. I mean, I don't know that it lasted that long.
What was this first or this main thing that you discovered that you felt like, oh my God, I have to make sure everybody knows this?
Oh man, I remember there was one day in particular where the idea that none of this was real from my standpoint of understanding real at the time was mind-boggling. The second thing was that there was really nobody. I mean, because again, coming from church background as a child, that God, this idea of God, that there was really nobody that to save me per se, that it was really all about me waking up, and it was just all up to me and Jesus and all of those things. So for me, I remember how jarring some of that was that particular day. I can't remember clearly exactly what it was, but it was a religious belief. Even though I was discovering things, it was this religious belief that was freeing but scary at the same time. And I remember I was like, I need to just step away from this mess for a minute. I remember thinking that I need a few days on this, because now you're pulling just God from me. What is going on? That's how I felt. You're taking this from me. I was like, then what now? And that was my feeling, like then what now? And it was that scary feeling of realizing that you were responsible for your journey, for like everything. And I had to sit with that until it settled, it settled in. So there were a few points there for me. So I get it when you come from a religious background, and then of course, as the years have gone by, and even now, I am able to look back and see some of the coding of that information, and some of the things that were very right there that really did support the journey, but it's how it was all interpreted. So as the years have gone by, I've been able to more go back and listen to not listen, but in my mind, return to some of that. I was like, wow, that's because they didn't get that. Okay. So it's a really mixed experience. But for me, one of the biggest things was that moment of being able to let go and accept everything about my life, like all of my life. And you see that in the holographic canvas in the very first part, when I thanked everybody in every situation, and all the people who made me happy, made me cry, everybody who betrayed me. And when I wrote that with tears, and the tears were of joy. It was this moment of feeling so free, because I just so felt the love of all beings beyond all the stuff we do to each other. I just felt this profound sense of of love, because I can't think of any other word, but that technology of love. I felt that. And how we do these things so that we can actually know what it is to have the human experience. So we do what we do to each other in one way out of love, which sounds crazy, but out of love on a bigger level, on a much different level than we're
not the bullshit. I love it.
I love everybody. Yeah, no, that's not what I'm talking about. And so I learned that you have to own how you feel about people. If you don't like them, you have to just go ahead and be okay with that and own that. This is the only way you can actually end up loving people, like being okay, because you get it. Not that fake, well, I want to do the right thing and love other people. No, that's just suffocating yourself. It just suffocates and you never get to your authentic you, and you just end up with problems, health problems, and you end up, well, I don't know if you want to go there, but you end up triggering more death codes than anything else, because you have learned nothing at that point. You have not learned or gone to a level of learning to allow more of those codes to fall away. Those programs, those death code programs, and all of that, the aging program. So that's why it's just this continuous transformation and work that has to happen, because you are, once again, you're coming up against programs that have been there for a long time. Lots of, yes, we get it, lots of engineering, lots of all kinds of stuff, but that's still the game. The deception, the alien, this, the engineer, all that stuff, it's still just all part of the game. And being able to step back and see that, it just starts to free you. It starts to release you, and you don't have to spend so much effort and energy battling things. Like I mentioned, people, with their psychic attacks, and this is not to reduce anybody's experience. I'm just saying what happens in the game when we are in a certain space. There's that, the abductions. What else do people go through? Those are like two
abductions, the psychic attacks, like
or they're coming at me because of what I know, or the government is chasing me because of what I know. Because all of those things, it's like, believe it or not, have they're rooted in the orders that you are putting out. So you have to look at the truth of yourself.
It's always you.
It's always you. Everything is only responding according to a resonating frequency, a resonating emotion, a resonating energy, things you believe about yourself. All of it is just working in that manner based on the individual. So I think those are some things that are tough for people. One, it's very distracting. Very distracting when your world is all about being abducted, or fighting psychic attacks all the time, or being chased,
fighting censorship.
It's distracting. You are not getting to the heart of it. You are not getting to that point. And this is neither right or wrong. This is something that you have to do. How you're playing the game is how you have to play the game. But when you get to the heart of it, when you get to you, it will all stop, because there's no resonance. There's no resonating frequency to give permission to all of that, to give rise to all of that. So I think that those things are so important for people to understand. And you have to be ready to come face to face with yourself. A lot of times people are not ready to do that. Because of the work, once again, the work involved, it's easier to do things out there. It's all out there. Which then keeps us completely distracted. And there's something else I wanted to add. And that's the reason why when you go to, I pick conferences because I think that's a lot of the more people can go there and see speakers and stuff. But
it's like going to church, right? Because people all come together, and you have the presenter sitting up on the stage over people, all eyes focused on one thing, right? It's perceived that we all are similar minded or like minded, and this is the person that is speaking the reality that we are to believe into existence.
Right. And you don't have to, particularly when, because we love to hear what's being done to us. We love that. A lot of the people that come to this stuff, they love to hear that. So you're getting that information, but you also see how many of these speakers, they are in ill health. A lot of these people are not in good shape at all. Well, can you ask yourself, why is that? What's going on? They're more distracted away from connecting with themselves. And they've put, instead of doing that kind of work, they've put it into more of compiling this information to tell you, you know, who's coming at you, what's happening, you know, what's going to happen, you know, just all that stuff. So you have to look at that. Why are they so broken down? For me, going way back when, I think, I've questioned this stuff since I got on this planet, since I was a child, or as far back as I can even remember being able to consciously think. It's just questioning a lot of this stuff, and then looking at the holes in it for myself, and looking at, you know, maybe why aren't other people noticing this is weird? Okay, here's one that later on came up for me. Again, we go back to the God thing. The idea when somebody says, you know, well, you know, yeah, God, you know, God made us, and we have to do his will, and I'm not going to do anything unless the Lord leads me to do it. And you start to think, who and what the hell am I talking about?
Yeah.
You know, you really, I mean, it has to really...
Like God has time to manage that with everybody.
But it's like, who are we talking about? Think about it. God made us. What does that sound like to you? Like when we make a robot, right? You know, my creator. When that starts to really ring in your head, like, yeah, well, you know, my creator, that starts to like go, what am I really talking about right now? My creator, what that information and that language does is it reduces human beings, it reduces them in a way that they don't feel worthy or capable of asking questions or of intercepting anything outside of that, because they're programmed to be subservient to something else.
So isn't it funny that these are the same people that are very offended by the idea that this is the game and that our bodies are that we are technology. So they constantly are talking about their creator, which is like what you said, what you hear, like.
But they're saying the same. It's contradiction,
right? So that's I know. But I just had this picture of like God sitting up there, like keeping track of like if everybody is doing what he wants them to do because he created them, and keeping track of every little thing in right?
Yeah.
So something else came to me while you were talking, and you know, like that is like we were talking about like when dealing with somebody that you don't like or something you don't like. We're gonna go with the somebody's because that's like people are sometimes harder to deal with than just even situations. Right. Like there is a tremendous amount of power in telling somebody you don't like them. But accepting them anyway. Right. Accepting their presence in your life is for a reason or whatever. And there's also an amazing power in being told that by somebody that they don't like you. Right. So someone who turned out to be one of my very best friends, who I actually probably trust, even though I wouldn't say that I'm as close with her as some of my other friends, or know her as well as I know some of my other friends, someone I trust implicitly, someone that like, no matter what, I know that I can count on this person to be honest with me and like, you know, all that kind of stuff. She told me she didn't like me the very first day that we met, right? She was training me at a job and I'm annoying. And she fucking told me that.
It is true.
Right? Anyway, she told me that, you know, she acknowledged that I was bright and good at what I was doing, whatever, but there was, you know, something about me that was fucking annoying and she didn't like me. Right. And in that moment, like the tears started to rise because even though I seem like I have a thick skin, I'm a Cancer, so I'm sensitive and all the
nobody wants to hear that though.
And my usual response would have been to start arguing back, challenging her on everything she was saying. But for some reason, and this was like shortly after I had gotten clean, so like it was a very
you're a little bit more vulnerable
space there. I just decided to like breathe it in, accept what she was saying, and like not respond.
That was huge.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And by the end of the week, she didn't dislike me anymore. Right. And by the end of the time, a few years later, that we stopped working together because she moved on and I moved on shortly after that, she was one of my best friends. She helped me through some of the hardest time in my life. And I know that she's always going to tell me the truth, because the hardest thing to tell someone is that you don't like them.
Right.
Especially when there's not a situation where you can tell them that and then walk away and never see them again.
Right.
Because they're going to be working together. Right. And so like that, you know, like, and also I've had the experience of telling someone, like, you know what, I don't really like you very much. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't like you. Right. And
it's easier to say that when it's said to you.
But what's funny is in either circumstance, whether you're being the one told you're not liked or you're telling someone else you like I'd say not all times, but like 7 out of 10 times, that person eventually ends up becoming a good friend of yours. Or somebody who, even if they're not your good friend, they work in a similar arena as you and you really respect their work, and you end up taking a good look at it and recognizing that, like, you know what, without this person in my life, I would not be the game player I am. I would not have figured out some of the things that I figured out. And so like to resist things and people you don't like, you know, like I'm having a big one right now with the situation. I hate stretching, right? Like when I ended my gymnastics career, like it was like, I am never stretching again. And I was fucking religious about it. I held straight to that. A back problem cropped up for me. And this one is like, it says you don't stretch. And I'm like, shut up. For 2 years, I've been telling her no. And finally I got to a place where it's like, fuck, I'm a fucking brilliant genius, and I have tried everything I could think of. I'm joking, guys.
No, but you are brilliant. So.
I had tried everything I could think of, and like I don't know if I hadn't reached the desperation point or just the point where it's just like when you get to the place where, like, you know, I'm just going to tell the person I don't like them, right? So I made peace with the fact that I don't like stretching, and like I actually found a couple of basic stretches that are not that offensive, and it is really helping. And I've experienced over the last like 8 weeks probably like 30 to 50% decrease in my back pain, which like everything else I tried, I might get 10% temporarily and move on. Right. So it's kind of like
it's that resisting doing. I get it with that resistance. I totally, I completely get it. Yeah, I kind of went through that this year. So,
and right now, where these perceived walls seem to be closing in on us, like rather than pushing back against them or like trying to like escape them or avoid them, it's like the deep breath and to just move through them. Right. Like just become one with the wall and emerge from the other side of it, or whatever kind of thing. And I think that, you know, like I don't think there's other answers besides that now anymore. Really, like I don't think there's avoidance of things anymore. Like I think
well, 2020 did that. 2020 vision. But absolutely. So yeah, 2020 definitely was about seeing, was about a lot of unveiling, even, you know, though we're veiled, people are veiled, but a lot of that unveiling, I think, to prepare for 2021 and whatever that cycle is of moving into other areas of expansion and possibility. And that's for everybody if they choose to. And more people, obviously, yes, they always leave the planet. I don't even know if we can say more people are leaving. Maybe it's just more people that we're aware of. I don't even know. The media, you can't really go by the media because they decide what your perception is going to be, really, as to how many people are dying or not dying, how many people are sick or not sick. You know, it's whatever it is, you know, how many people are overweight or how many people are not. They have had a handle on human minds for as long as we can, you know, we can think of in terms of this kind of technology. How it was back then with the town criers, I don't know what they were writing down, you know, and how things got around. But I do know we always have a core of people that influence, and even in tribes, it doesn't matter. There's always somebody that influences and determines, you know, what the focus is going to be of human beings. And I think right now, again, this 2021, we have the opportunity to really take ownership of self. And again, 2020 was showing that this is what everybody was being pushed to. Can you take ownership and responsibility for yourself? and some people can't. They don't want to take responsibility for themselves. And so the system, as a way of helping to force people, they end up making people feel like other people need to be responsible for them. And it is kind of a reverse thing. But yeah, it's like they kept pushing.
I wear my mask to protect you.
To protect you, which is just a big lie. To protect you, or the people that feel that you need to wear your mask to protect me. So it's all of that. And coming into that realization that, how do I really feel? Can I hold my truth? And I mean, I see it all the time, particularly for me, which I talk about when I do hiking videos. I don't really focus on that part, but I go hiking in the morning, every morning, and I go really early as a way to avoid certain experiences. Whenever
the annoying people on the dance floor.
Whenever I encounter, whenever I happen to, there happen to be people, obviously, that might be going by with masks on, or people that feel that they need to turn all the way over here, whatever. I don't wear a mask on the trail. I won't wear a mask, and I just don't, because I don't feel I need to. I'm out in nature. This is it right here, people. Nature is it.
If your system can't handle nature, then you can travel.
Like your nature.
Yeah.
You're hooked up to it. That's how you're getting oxygen in, where you think it's coming from. And then look at the trees, look at everything around you. Again, tear everything down, tear down every building. And all you're still going to have is the dirt under your feet, and you have the trees and the mountains, and you're going to have air. I mean, you remove all our clothes, and here we are naked. We are nature. We are out in nature. I think when people start to understand that, that is what sustains people. That is the sustaining force. It's not all this other stuff. And so for me, that was my decision. I'm going hiking, and I come out here to bond with the rabbits and the owls that I see in the morning, and to just balance myself and to breathe in this fresh air and all of that. And no, I don't hit that trail in hypocrisy doing it for others, because me doing what I'm doing it for others as well, because I'm not being hypocrite.
I just undid everything you've been saying the whole hour.
I'm doing it for you as well, by not doing what I normally would not do. I'm not going to pretend to do that. So, this is where we are right now. And it's happening for major reasons. It's going to be more people that either decide that they can't do this right, they're not coded for it, and they go, or you're going to have folks who are going to go through some serious expansive awareness growth that's going to happen, and you have got people in the middle. Nature, once again, it's an evolution. Nature is propelling and moving the human race, whether it be by the default program that I've talked about so often, whether it's a default expansion, doesn't matter. This is a time in this particular cycle, and this is where I said with the GPS, the coordinates, this particular cycle, this what we would call this moment in time, how else can I put it? Okay, think of a map, or your GPS, or you're looking at something where a map, a set of coordinates, and it's specific latitude and longitude, and you're measuring specifically that spot, a particular spot where you are. Okay, well, it's kind of the same thing. We've worked our way around to a particular moment in this cycle as to how the planet operates. And in this particular moment, this number of revolutions that we've come to, it's automated that this transformation must happen in the system. This is where we go back to thinking about it from a technological standpoint. It's a running system. You've got Once again, you've got this 365 days, whatever we call 365 days. Even if it's not 365 days, we can all agree that there are cycles. We see it when night and day shift. We see it all the time, and we see as to how it affects us, how it impacts us. So it tells you we are part of it. We are networked into something. So no, it's pointless just fighting people about, well, it's not really 365 days. I don't give a damn. It doesn't matter. There's a cycle going on. That is irrelevant at this point, because all that does is just distract you, because now you get to go around telling everybody about, exactly what we're dealing with. In the meantime, you're falling apart and you got all these problems.
Right.
All right. So you go back to that realization that there is a cycle that we are networked into. To me, that was major. Somehow I am in my brain, I am interfaced. Some part of the system is interfaced into this network, which is what's allowing my body to respond, and everybody's body to respond according to these cycles, according to, and you see that with aging. Again, we talk about puberty. You see that something is doing this. Why the body knows by a girl turns 13, sometimes younger, but that was the core number of cycles that the menstrual cycle would begin, right? So something is going on. And to me, that was just major in terms of really honing in on that technology, to see that the more you can see how you're wired to the system, is the freer you can be. You're not fighting it, but you're seeing it and you're understanding it. The more that you can get that, and it wants you to see that, is the more you have a personal opportunity to expand and evolve. Nature wants you to do that. Nature wants us to grow, because nature's job is to just branch out into every potential. And when I say nature, I'm not just talking about the rocks and the trees and all that. I'm talking about creation itself. Creation itself wants to, whatever you call source,
it wants to be understood, and it wants to work with you.
It wants to be understood. It wants to work with you. It wants to be it wants the journey of all the potentials that it knows exist, which is endless potentials. All is known, but the journey, that's where the evidence is the experiencing. So the journey, the process of being dumbed down to growing, to expanding, is the journey. It's a full journey. So that's why the acceptance of everything, like, oh, okay, so everything I've done, everything that seems stupid, everything that whatever, it was just all part of that. And here we are. And then you keep going. That's what needs to happen. It wants you to discover, because that's the job. Now, who are we talking about? That's why I make the distinction of what's hooked up to the network. Well, your body is hooked up to the network. I mean, it's really your body, and the idea of consciousness system, that's part of it. But your body, more than anything else, is wired into the network, and the mind, the mind that occupies or runs the body. It's a whole other thing too, because we exist in all these layers in this particular human experience. So all of this system, then, this automated body, right, running based on the automated system and based on the awareness that the individual ends up having, that's when changes begin to happen. If we are not growing and changing, if that part of us is not experiencing expansion once again, and the brain doesn't see that once again, then the natural, the automatic system or process will start shutting people down. And it makes sense. The technology, when you think about it, the technology makes sense. If you, as a streaming, and I hope I'm not confusing your audience, but you as
they
a
like to be
streaming,
it gives them something to figure out.
Okay, good. Then you'll have something to figure out right now. You as a streaming, a stream of information. Okay, Sonia, let's say Sonia. Sonia, the idea of Sonia right, as a streaming program, right? Because this is basically what it is. Down here, I'm a streaming program
that gets expressed through this vessel.
Absolutely.
And the reality around.
Yeah. So this is streaming, and it's operating, through this vehicle, this vessel, this technology, and all of that. Well, if that stream that's called Sonia is not expanding, if that frequency, if that's not picked up by the general network, then we're talking about nature, if growth is not detected, because everything is frequency, everything is measurable, if growth is not detected in a way that keeps you then in the construct, right, then the shut off starts to happen in people according to certain programs that are in there, certain genetic programs, so many different things.
Kind of like when you have an old computer and the operating system like no longer is functional on that computer, right? And so for a while you're able to do little workarounds and whatever, and you just basically finally get to a point where you can no longer there's no longer like an available operating system for you to be able to interface with the expanded level of technology with the old piece of machinery that you're running.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. There's no upgrade going on.
Okay.
Yeah, there's absolutely no upgrade. So yes, you're ready like on an assembly line for shutdown. And shutdown comes in a whole bunch of different ways. People go into car accidents, all kinds of interesting things. It's not random, people. I realized a long time ago. Death is not a random experience. There's a whole lot more going on in there that really triggers these particular experiences. So I think it's really important, again, for people to understand why this kind of stuff happens. Are you growing? Are you evolving? Can you surrender to yourself? Can you surrender to the acceptance that that all that exists is possibilities, and not spend time blaming and beating up yourself and other people and all that stuff is just the cue for gradual shutdown.
Yeah.
Because it's so, I can't think of another word right now. It's so primitive. The behavior becomes so primitive that it's not progress. But if you can behave like that and then accept, then you come into acceptance of it, and you're like, wow.
So do you think that like all of the sort of occurrences of the last year was basically like an offering up to the people, like if you want to shut down, there's like a big opportunity for shutdown right now?
I think that was it an opportunity?
And this is the last question for the first part.
Yeah. Okay, so good to know. So good to know. It is an opportunity. I think it's just a sweep.
A sweep.
In a cycle. It's a sweep in a cycle, and if you're programmed, if you're ripe for it, then you go through that. Then that's what happens. You're ripe for it, and it just kind of happens. But certainly, it is time. It's like it is literally a reset, and that's kind of where we are. And so the government, the political system, despite how we feel about it, and despite the power that they do think that they have, they are playing their roles as well.
They're doing what they have to do. It's what the game requires.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're carrying out the commands of something much bigger, nature and otherwise, and everything else that we consider in there and doing this stuff to us and all of it.
The system is coded for something, and that is the government's perception of what the code is commanding. So they're carrying it out. The fact that you and I may have a different perception of it that we're also entitled to carry out means nothing to what they're doing. We're just existing in that same shared space. Okay, you just proved your telepathy, because I had been thinking before you went into that very interesting segment that like I wanted to wrap it up with you getting back to cosmic GPS and current coordinates. You did it without me having to ask the question. Yeah. So you proved your skills at telepathy as well.
All
right, we're gonna go over to the patron section.
I try.
Let her brag. All right. We're gonna go over to the patron section where I'm gonna ask a master game player for some of her thoughts and comments on
Scary.
the current game that some of us are playing. But before we go, tell people where they can find you and what your current offerings are right now. If you have
Every
any.
time you say so, every time anybody says, told people where they can find you, it always makes me crack up. Because I'm always like, I don't even know. But according to this game, you can find out more about me on therealsoniabarrett.com.
How many
That's my
fake ones are
website.
there?
There's probably quite a number.
Yeah, quite a
Yeah,
number.
quite a number. But therealsoniabarrett.com, and
You have
that's
upcoming
a big
workshops or webinars or anything?
well, there's a reality Wednesday that I do that's free. That's every month. It's the first Wednesday of every month. And then what am I doing? Some of the workshops right now are private. So we haven't, and there's people that have done the series of workshops that we did last year.
Mhm.
But if you go to the website, I'll see what shows up.
Mhm.
And then I may be doing a couple workshops, but I do them as they really show up in my awareness.
You go through spurts. It'll be like a ton of workshops, no workshops,
Yeah.
not for a long
Yeah.
time, but then a ton, like all at the same
know.
time overlapping. Then none.
That I don't. I just kind of follow. I don't like to do workshops because I think I should do a workshop.
Yeah.
I only do things just because I'm feeling that.
You want to.
Okay. Yeah.
I do what I want.
Yeah.
All right.
And you do it just because.
Guys, the lovely and amazing Sonia Barrett. Join us at patreon.com/offplanetmedia for part 2. See you over there. Bye.